and welcome to the first ever time I'm going to be trying to bake. This is a Vlogmas video. This should be Vlogmas Day 9, but again, who knows with how things go for me in terms of my schedule. But crossing our fingers, this should be going up on December 9th. So today, we're going to be trying to make something out of this book. It is called Kitchen Secrets. It is a old church lady cookbook, so it's got all the recipes given by just the ladies of the church. Today we are specifically, because it's the holiday season, going to try to make the gingerbread. It's called Mom's Gingerbread by a Mrs. Rain. I'm really excited because there's also not much info with it. So I'll just get everything else ready to go. And so, as you can see in the recipe right here, you're going to need 3 eggs, 1 cup of sugar. You're going to need a pint of molasses. I actually have 2 because these only come in 12 fluid ounces. You're going to need some baking soda and also lard. I don't have lard, and in case I want to give it to any of my friends who don't eat pork, I have coconut oil instead. You're going to need a cup of cold coffee. This one is more or less cold. I've had it off of the heat for about an hour now. You're going to need some allspice, cinnamon, ginger, and of course, flour, as well as a little bit of salt. Those are the ingredients, and that's all we've really been given. To start off, I have started to preheat my oven to 350 because I feel like that's an appropriate temperature usually for baking. And let's get started. We'll kind of go in order of how these ingredients are listed. So let's get started. So to get started with, I have already cracked the 3 eggs into a bowl, and now we're going to add 1 cup of sugar. It's weird trying to cook at this or bake at this angle, but not bake. It's weird to record at this angle. I've never done this before. Or the most I've done is that one quick shot of me making eggs in the morning. But I was curious about this because I have always wanted to. I've tried one recipe from this cookbook before on making drop cookies, and they were absolutely delicious. I used it as a drop cookie to make into a thumbprint. It worked out really well. Also, I'm gonna need to clean again a little bit more just because some of it went flying. 1 cup of sugar, and now we whisk. I'll be honest, I'm much more in the habit of using, say, like a fork to whisk things than my actual whisk, especially when it comes to stuff like this. I found this cookbook at a, whatchamacallit, Peddler's Mall. And I've been recommended to get this kind of, a book like this from TikTok at one point, so I was like, you know what, we'll do that. Also, I do know the egg should have been beaten beforehand, but we'll deal with it. I know that was my fault. Hopefully it doesn't mess with the texture of the eggs too much. So we've got the 3 eggs and 1 cup of sugar. Now we add the molasses. Oh my gosh, this does not smell good. I have never actually had molasses or smelled it before. I think the closest I've ever gotten to molasses is brown sugar, or studying the Great Molasses Flood that occurred in Boston. But I know that one more because of material science than anything else. It is actually one of the examples for teaching us about failure mechanics, and specifically like stress, like fracturing and stress and like pressure at cracks because of the cracks that developed on the tank that had the molasses in it. I know a lot of people know it from The Watcher, and I will say I adore The Watcher, and that is one of my YouTube channels when they do the puppet history that I listen to a lot. So that was 12 fluid ounces. I need to put in another 4. I think that's probably the best. This thing is like colored also, so I don't know. Put this in the sink for now. God, that is a very strong smell. And at least now, if I need it, I can use the molasses to make brown sugar. Which I laugh because I remember there had been a TikTok a while back that was like, somebody was like, oh yeah, oh, this went up to 5 ounces, I gotta pour some back. Whereas like, oh, if you don't have brown sugar, just use like molasses and white sugar. And I'm like, and somebody's response to it was, what makes you think I have molasses if I don't have brown sugar in my house? Okay. And so that's all I think of when I think of this molasses, really. Now I'll think of the smell. Because, yeah, nobody warned me about that. I don't know how to describe it, but it does not smell good. Okay, let me grab a spoon just to kind of scrape some of this out. Okay. Whew. Okay, next is a teaspoon of soda, which I assume means baking soda. Ooh, there goes the fork. That is a sticky situation, and I'm gonna have to, but let's mix it right now. I do not know what this texture is gonna be. I think it's gonna be like more of like how, I think it's gonna be like banana bread. That's the vibe I'm getting from it. But maybe this will make more of the cookie style, but I think if it was the cookies, they'd say specifically it's like, it's gingerbread cookies, not Mom's gingerbread. Yep. Well, this is interesting. The next thing they mentioned to add was a large tablespoon of lard. So like I said, I was going to be using the coconut oil, which I can use a 1-to-1 ratio on. And in this case, I feel like it's just how much the heart feels. So I feel like this is an appropriate amount. Come on, get out. Get out of my sandwich. Okay, let's go. This is going to be also a very interesting combination of smells, because this coconut oil definitely smells coconutty, and then the smell of the molasses is perforating through everything. I'm hoping that especially the ginger will mask a good chunk of it. This will be fun to clean later. So let's mix this in. It's interesting. I don't think it's getting picked up on the camera, but I wouldn't say it oxidizes, but the top of the batter gets lighter if you let it sit for a bit. So I'm trying to whisk this in, get the coconut oil to mix a bit with the rest of the ingredients. It was already kind of warm. I mean, my apartment is honestly probably about 72 degrees, so that definitely helps. And I'm adding in the heat just by mixing. Adding extra air in there. Okay. This doesn't look too bad in terms of how it'll go. Okay. So, because next thing is the cold coffee, and that asks for a cup. So I tried to make a very strong cup of coffee. As you guys saw in the clip beforehand, I actually used less water than I use for my usual cups of coffee in the morning. So, mix that in. Ah, the smell of coffee. That does mask the smell of molasses. You're gonna hear a lot of me complaining about molasses. Oh, the lard was supposed to be melted. Whoops. We can make it work just through our own sheer will. I'm really bad about reading directions in these kind of things. So, honestly, as you can see multiple times, I'm not the best at it, but I feel especially with the fact that the coffee was not as cold as it could be, that will help. Also, surprisingly, I was able to get a lot of the chunks to break up, at least initially when mixing. So I'm going to mix a bit more and I'll catch up with y'all. I mixed it up as well as I could. You can kind of see here with the lighting, it looks a lot lighter. Yeah, it develops this kind of like variation in color, like a crust almost. So the next step was adding in 3 cups of flour. It doesn't say sifted, however, I usually like to sift my flour. So, turns out from the last time I used this flour, I had a spoon in there. Whoops. That goes in the sink. And I know this isn't the nicest way of doing it, but it works for me. So what I'll probably do is try to sift in a cup, mix it a bit, do another cup, kind of get an idea of what this consistency is supposed to be. So in the case of the first cup, as usually what happens when baking, it almost did nothing. Second, also I do remember I made another recipe from this cookbook about a couple of months ago. I actually also made the apple cake. That was one of the recipes I made for when the former senior grad student in my research group was doing her defense. I had the recipe, I had a bunch of apples from going apple picking, and I decided to try and make it. So, that was the second one. And this is going to be the third. This is going to be a very interesting recipe. This is kind of starting to thicken up. Feels like a little bit. But we shall see how this goes. Okay, last cup. And I'm actually going to switch it out for using a different cup, because I have the tail end of this bag, to the point where I have an extra bag on hand in case it is needed. So we're only doing a half cup here. Yeah, sorry about that beep. I don't know whose car that was, but I swear it wasn't mine. Because I'm not driving right now. Because I am in here cooking, which is like, that sounds so stupid, but yeah. Again, is this exact? Not really, which I know is not great, especially in baking. However, with how little flour I have, and I don't have any of the fancy like containers to put my flour in. This feels good enough to me. Yes, this is mildly happenstance. Yeah, I also thought I was gonna run out of the flour much sooner than this, so. Also, if you're Smoky Steve and Mark, I am sorry for you guys having to put up with my so-so form of baking. So this is definitely giving the consistency of like brownies or muffins. So now I'm just going to add a teaspoon of each. I'll use a teaspoon, give or take, of the cinnamon. Smells amazing. Yes, I'm going to use the same ones. I may go a little over on this ginger, but it asks for a teaspoon of ginger. And it's gingerbread. Let's go a little bit heavier on its literal named spice. And lastly, we're going to, that's nutmeg, never mind, grab a teaspoon of the allspice. Okay, let's whisk this all together, and I will add a pinch of salt in just a second. Oh, this does smell like Christmas. Oh, ho, ho, ho. But the undertone is always still this freaking molasses. And then just a pinch, maybe a little bit more of salt. Mix that in. And I will now be right back. I'm just going to get the containers ready to go. So I have filled and greased the pan. I'm going to put this in the oven. I will put a tray underneath it because I am worried it's going to overflow. But hopefully it all works out. I have yet to Google how long I should approximately have it in there. Based off of the fact that it's like this, I think it's going to be a bit of a longer bake. So this is about after an hour of baking. Theoretically, it was like when I pulled out the toothpick, it wasn't fully dry, but I didn't want to burn the top anymore. And honestly, I think I should have used a different pan than using this, but I only had ingredients and no instructions, so I just kind of was going off of my judgment, and my judgment proved me wrong. So I'm about to cut into this and have a taste. So yeah, you can see it is, some of the inside's not cooked all the way through, but also it was looking to be done. So let's have a bite. Ooh, that steam. I am nervous. So last thing of the night, I'm gonna try some of this bread. It does not smell that good at all. Okay. The stuff I'm doing for y'all. It's not bad, actually. It smells worse. I've had something like this before. This is very old lady. Mrs. Rain, why the heck did you not put instructions in this? Like, at all. I wonder if there was a way to get around how much molasses is in it. I know I can't stop talking about the molasses, but it was weird. This does taste like something you'd get from, like, your grandmother for Christmas time frame. Just, it's not super gingery either, that's the thing. And it just bothered me because I feel like I've had this before. Like, I feel like a church lady at the church I grew up at used to give me something like this. Also, it needs something to add a little bit more oomph. Maybe either nuts or chocolate chips. Chocolate chips in this would probably be actually really good, maybe. It's not my... I will not be making this again. Maybe I'll make molasses cookies or something, but... yeah, maybe this, or maybe raisins. I know the idea of adding raisins to this is weird, but it just needs something extra with the texture. Because yeah, it's similar to any other kind of loaves that you'd get with like pumpkin loaf or like zucchini loaves, but it's just like bread, but it's just not something, it's uncanny valley-ish, if you get what I mean. But thank you guys for watching me fail at trying to bake this. I was trying to be in the festive season, but I ultimately failed in this. Do not try to replicate what I did. Yes, thank you guys so much for watching. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!